So March Madness and the ACC, well, they fit together like a glove, but here in 2016, it's ACC football and Wednesday night that certainly fit together. This is ACC Breakdown. We talk nothing but football each and every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and we bring in the very best bloggers in the ACC. And so tonight that means Cam Underwood from State of the U, Mike McDaniel from Inside the ACC, and also Joey Weaver from the Rumble Seat. All right, guys, so we're going to pick on your teams and see what you got for spring practice thus far. And we talked about it before we hit the record button, everyone. And sadly enough, the honor goes to Cam based on Miami's 8-5 record. That was good enough to get him first dibs on spring practice. So, Cam, when I look at this football team, we've talked about it many times throughout the course of the 2015 season. Offensive line, Stacey Coley, a sure bet at wide receiver. But after that, you got some question marks. So let's stick to offense first, and then we'll attack some defense.
No worries. Just had our first practice of the spring yesterday, and there's a video up that, will kind of walk you through behind the scenes. That's Mark Richt's first practice as Miami Hurricanes head coach, which is an exciting time. Our State of the U photographer was down there, and he put up a picture of Mark Richt with the hashtag on Twitter, not golden. So, that's a positive. So, we just hit the field. Gus Edwards, who missed the 2015 season after tearing his knee up in the, third day of fall practice, he was out doing drills and everything. Not 100% yet, but he's a big back, 6'2", 235, 240. Kind of, a huge feature back, kind of like Najee Davenport was in that rotation years ago. And that's going to be a valued asset for the running attack. New offensive coordinator, Thomas Brown, who played for Richt at Georgia, is a professed two running back guy. He shared the ball with Noshawn Marino up there. He was the running backs coach at Georgia last year. He worked with Melvin Gordon at Wisconsin the year before that. That's slightly different because Melvin Gordon was so far and away the best back on their team. But they still even had two guys get 1,000 yards when he was at Wisconsin. So that's going to be a major thing, major key to success. DJ Khaled, shout out. Brad Kaya is awesome, plain and simple. If you watch the video of the practice, obviously following Mark Richt, who is serving as – he's not quarterback's coach. His son is, but at the beginning of the install and everything right now, he's definitely the guy who's working with the quarterbacks. And you can just hear him saying, you know what, Brad, that's a great throw. Oh, that's beautiful. Brad, oh, that's amazing. And Joey, stop trolling me. No, Brad Kaya is not the best quarterback in the ACC. I made that mistake last year. That would be Deshaun Watson. I can admit my faults. Leave me alone. As I was saying,
we don't expect to be trolling each other.
I know, right? I'm over here trying to give this sage insight and wisdom and everything, and I'm just No. I mean, Brad Kaya is, but I mean, look, you have Austin as Brad Kaya is 1A and the gap between everybody else at the quarterback position in the conference. But Brad Kaya is really good. You saw Stacey Coley making some plays. He's the unquestioned number one wide receiver. You saw Lawrence Cager making plays. I think that he's going to step up and have a big year. Joseph Yearby is back in that rotation at running back. Mark Walton's back. Trayon Gray is back, and he was, seen doing some very good things out there as well. We have David Njoku, who is going to be a breakout star at tight end. He's, he won the ACC high jump, I believe, at 6'4", 244 for the indoor season. He was the champion, I believe, of that, or at least won a couple events or a couple of meets on high jump. So he's a freak athlete. Christopher Herndon is out there. Also as one of the better tight ends. Standish Dobard, he's more of a workhorse guy than a superstar guy, but that gives us very good depth at tight end. And then, you come to the offensive line, and that's going to be the thing that is going to be the determiner of Miami Hurricanes' success, because we're going to try to run the ball. Mark Richt has come in and said we're going to be physical. We're going to be more physical than everybody else. We're going to start fast and faster, play harder in the fourth quarter. And that was in another different video for indoor mat drills. So you can see that there's obviously some propaganda going on, but he said these kind of things. And that then falls on the players to make the plays. So Sonny Adogwu was not out at practice yesterday. He had a foot injury that precluded him from playing in the bowl game, so he might be still with that. So really just waiting to see who steps up on that offensive line. And I don't think that story is going to be finalized anytime in the near future through spring or even the beginning of fall practice. But that's going to be the thing that really determines what the level of success Miami is going to have this
definitely,
year.
Mike and Joey, if you've got some better questions than me, jump on in. I don't know about you, Joey. We may have to put the clamps on you. But Mike, definitely here if you got some questions for Cam and discuss among yourselves. But I want to talk defense because you got a new defensive coordinator in Manny Diaz. Secondary got hit with huge losses. Deion Bush, Tracy Howard, Artie Burns. Your thoughts about who's coming in, Cam, if you're fairly confident, what you would like to hear from spring practice concerning the secondary?
The secondary, that's going to be a position of weakness, I think, for the defense. You do have, some very good safeties that are returning. Jaquan Johnson was a superstar recruit, 4-time first-team All-Dade County in high school, and there's only a handful of players who's ever been able to say that. So he's going to be out there. Rayshawn Jenkins back for a redshirt senior year. Robert Knowles coming off of a redshirt year. He went to Miami Edison, very physical player. And so he's used that year to really develop himself even more and really learn more of the game. He was kind of more of I'm just going to be a better athlete than you kind of guy in high school. But if you put that with some knowledge, hopefully, he'll be able to play well. And then Jamal Carter, who's going to be a senior this upcoming year. And is a huge hitter. He got, he knocked a couple people out. He got a targeting penalty in the Nebraska game, second half. So I think he's going to be good. So you have a solid 4-man rotation there. Adding Adrian Colbert from the University of Texas as a grad transfer who's going to come over, be in the rotation, maybe at safety, and then also look to play some cornerback, which is really the position with the least amount of depth on our team. Sheldrick Redwine and Corn Elder are going to be your presumed starters there at cornerback. And then after that, it's a whole lot of who knows. The secondary is going to be a thing that is going to be a little bit of a challenge for us going forward, just specifically from a numbers standpoint and really finding that depth of consistent play. Because if a cornerback goes down, if a Corn Elder who had that return against Duke, if he goes down, if you have Redwine who gets injured, if you have, Colbert goes down, behind them, there's a really a big drop-off of talent. So that's going to be a thing where we're going to need the front 7 to really get pressure going to help out the secondary. And just, talking about what's been going on, Manny Diaz is our new defensive coordinator. He's a Miami native, and he's talked about playing fast, 4-3, get up the field like your hair is on fire kind of defense, which is what you see from the Optimist level all the way up in Miami, Optimist middle school, or which is basically middle school, high school. And I believe that's the way that the University of Miami should be playing. Is the way that all the players down here play. And some of the players are talking about, that one gap system. Okay, so 2-gap system, this is the thing that Miami has been talking about for years. When you have a 2-gap system, that's the gap in between the offensive linemen. So a 2-gap, you hold and you grab and you read and react. So, okay, you're controlling the gap on both sides of the guy that you're engaged with. In a 1-gap system, you shade a little bit, and this gap is my gap. That's it. In whichever gap it is, and you get up the field. So there's less read and react, and it's more just go. And that's what everybody wants to play. Kendrick Norton, who's going to be a sophomore defensive tackle, he's talked about that being awesome. Al-Qadi Muhammad, Jermaine Grace, talking about having lost a little bit of weight from the weak side linebacker so that he can blitz and he can run, which is what he specializes in. So a lot of guys on the front 7 are talking about the new system really fitting their skill set and tying that back together. I think if the front 7 is able to wreak havoc, which is what Manny Diaz defenses are known for, and Craig Kulagowski, our defensive line coach who came from Missouri, his defensive lines are known for that. And our defensive coordinator is known for wreaking havoc, getting up the field. So if we put those together and actually do that, I think that will help the secondary because they won't have to cover for 5 and 6 seconds. They'll only have to cover, 2 seconds maybe. And if that smaller or shorter covering time, that'll help.
Football players want to play. They don't want to think. And that doesn't mean they're not smart guys, but they don't want to think, and that's not the time to think. You think at practice, you think in the film room, you want to explode, you want to get to the football, and especially, and this is a little oversimplified, but if you believe that you've got at least as good a talent, if not better talent, then you want your players really to play and explode off the ball. Now, if you've got some deficiencies on defense and you need to play safe and hope for the best and make teams drive at 80 yards in 15 plays, then you do something different. But hey, they got the athletes and obviously another good recruiting class coming in. All right, Mike, Virginia Tech, one step behind Miami, 7 wins. So you get the second slot tonight. The Hokies, of course, with a huge quarterback battle. Brendan Motley did the job at times last year. He's by far got the most experience with 167 pass attempts last year. But we've got the junior college transfer and Sherrod Evans, Chris Durkin, Dwayne Lawson. How do you size this thing up?
Yeah, so spring practice starts next week for the Hokies, so they're kind of at the back end of the spring schedule as far as ACC teams are concerned. Most teams have already gotten their practices underway. The Hokies wait a little while after their spring break. They give the players an extra week of morning workouts before they move on to spring practice. But like you said, I think quarterback is absolutely the position to watch in spring camp. When you look at a guy like Brendan Motley, he does have the most experience, but he probably does not have the most talent as far as quarterbacks on the roster are concerned. You got a guy there at Dwayne Lawson who came in under Frank Beamer, one of his recruiting classes last year. And when he came into the program, he came in with a guy that we've talked about a couple times, an offensive quality control coach from his high school, that all of a sudden, or he was an offensive coordinator at the high school, was the offensive quality control coach at Virginia Tech last year. So Dwayne Lawson seemed poised to step in and play starting quarterback here. But then, of course, we had the coaching change, so now anything can happen. I think the one thing to watch here with the battle between Evans, Lawson, and Motley is the fact that experience, I don't think, is going to be a huge factor. Like, I don't think Brendan Motley is a guy who's going to have a leg up just because he's played more often at the Division I level. Evans is a guy that's going to come in. He had extremely high levels of success at the junior college level. He's coming in as a 3-star recruit, was one of the top 100 JUCO prospects in the country. And he's a guy that kind of fits the mold of Justin Fuente offense a little bit better. He can roll out and he can really throw the football. And Brendan Motley, he struggled with his accuracy at times last year, but you could always count on him to run when you needed him to run. That was never the issue. So what's really interesting to watch here is what quarterback in camp separates themselves and best fits the mold of what Justin Fuente wants to do in his first year at Virginia Tech. That's what we most want to watch. And for Dwayne Lawson, I think it's a little bit disappointing for him. Not that he's not going to have a shot at the starting quarterback job. He has as good a shot as anybody. The issue with Dwayne Lawson is his eligibility. Last year, he was supposed to be redshirted. Then you get Michael Brewer hurt, and the offensive coaching staff couldn't decide what they wanted to do at the position. So they end up burning Dwayne Lawson's red shirt. He took, I think it was 5 or 6 snaps against Furman in a game that got out of hand, in a hurry. And then all of a sudden, you're thinking, okay, well, Lawson's going to play a lot now that Brewer's out at least 6 or 7 weeks, and they don't know really how confident they are in Brendan Motley. Well, all of a sudden, Motley ends up taking a majority of the snaps. We don't see much of Dwayne Lawson again, and just like that, his red shirt's burned after probably 15 or 20 snaps on the season. It's just extremely disappointing for a Virginia Tech fan when you have a guy who's been as highly touted as Dwayne Lawson was coming out of high school to already burn a season of eligibility when they really didn't have to do so. There was one other quarterback there buried on the depth chart, Chris Durkin. He was a non-factor at the quarterback position. He's now moved to tight end. Calvin Klein, who was a big target for Tech a couple seasons ago, then he got hurt, and then last year he never really got into the fold. Of course, Bucky Hodges emerged the year Calvin Klein was hurt. And once Klein got back, he never really got his feet back under him, so he transferred to Texas A&M. And with backup tight end, and I don't really want to call him a backup because he was a really true tight end on the roster, because Bucky Hodges, we see him split out at receiver more often than not, was Ryan Malik, and he's going on most likely to the NFL. Don't know if he'll be drafted, but he'll definitely be in a camp somewhere next season. So I think Chris Durkin moving from quarterback to tight end just continues that narrative that if you don't work at quarterback at Tech, you're getting moved to tight end, especially if you're a big-time target. And Chris Durkin definitely fits that mold, and he's a guy who's going to fly a little bit under the radar here in the ACC and could become a very successful pass catcher for the Hokies here next season.
All right, Joey, if you want to talk within the first 10 minutes of these shows, your team's going to have to do better. So we're sitting on 3 wins for the Jackets from last year, 1-7 in the ACC. But Justin Thomas back. So consider that this quarterback, 2 years after leading this team to an Orange Bowl win and a division championship, is still on campus. So 6 starters back on offense, 5 on defense. You got C.J. Leggett back after missing all of 2015. So there are some hopeful signs.
Yeah, so Georgia Tech has not started spring practice yet either. They go on spring break, I want to say next week, and then they'll start immediately after that. So they still got a little bit of time. Like you mentioned, Justin Thomas coming back for his senior year. The thought is that he might be a little bit limited in spring practice. I think that a lot of people didn't really realize how much of a beating he took throughout the year with how bad the offensive line was, particularly in pass protection, things like that. I think he's been slowly kind of healing up. I think it was an ankle and a shoulder or something that he was kind of dealing with down the stretch. There were some people that would have said, if they had to play a 13th game, he might not have been able to play it. But in any case, yeah, he's kind of healing up. He's coming back. He'll be ready to go. I think before the 2015 season, I posted an article that was talking about how the 2015 season was a very unique opportunity to kind of see the value of a quarterback. Because in 2014, Thomas was surrounded by seniors everywhere, and they were really talented, really good guys that knew exactly what they were doing, and it played to his benefit big time. 2015 comes around, there's a whole brand new crop of skill position players around him, and you kind of saw what happened. It was a big struggle and a bit of a fiasco throughout the season. And Thomas, being the quarterback, the consistency was not enough to get the team where it needed to go. So hopefully with some healing done and a few less freak injuries and a little more experience with some of these young guys at the skill positions, they'll be able to kind of have a better feel for what needs to happen in the fall to make some of those victories happen. I think in spring practice, one of the interesting battles to watch is going to be the B-back position. One of the things last year that I think a lot of people didn't really realize, and I kind of thought about today for the first time, was before last season, there was not a single guy that played B-back for Georgia Tech who was playing B-back in 2014. You had Marcus Allen, who was playing linebacker, Patrick Scove, who was playing fullback at Stanford, and Marcus Marshall, who was in high school. And so those are your three feature backs for the season. And so it's little wonder that they had some problems, in different areas as far as knowing their assignments, proper blocking, especially on passing plays, things like that. So they get some health back this season, like you mentioned. C.J. Leggett and Quade Weimerskirch, both of those guys had some season-ending injuries in spring practice last year. Hopefully they can kind of avoid that this year and have a healthy crop of B-backs coming into the season. But I think that's going to be a fun battle to watch. The other one that's going to be really interesting to watch is the wide receiver position. You got Ricky June coming back. He'll be one of the main wide receivers. And after that, it could be a little more wide open. Brad Stewart played last year as a true freshman, had a few big catches, but I think that, as far as how physically gifted he is, there are other guys that are, a little more athletic that might be more intriguing as, downfield burner types. So that'll be kind of fun to watch. One of the guys in particular would be Christian Philpott. He was a big track star in Florida in high school, did very well. And then Harlan Howell also has a lot of physical potential there. Both of those guys redshirted last season. With the reins kind of taken off of them, it'll be interesting to see kind of what they're able to manage. And then, as you mentioned, on the defensive side, a lot of positions being replaced. I think they have to replace the entire starting secondary, which is a little bit intimidating. You got both corners and both safeties have to be replaced. Luckily, the two corner spots is Step Durham, who's been kind of groomed the last couple of years to be that go-to corner. And then they'll also most likely be starting Lamont Simmons, who was a transfer from USC, who people were saying is one of the best players in practice, all through the season last year. So he'll get, I think, 3 more years of eligibility, and we'll be seeing the first of him in live action this fall. At the safety spot, A.J. Gray was a very highly touted freshman last year, played quite a bit of nickel corner. He'll probably end up at one of the safety spots, and then kind of what they do with the other one, there's not really a lot of telling at this point. So we'll have to see there. And then up front, the defensive line is not particularly deep right now. They've got a lot of youth up there. Francis Callan is a rising fifth-year senior. He was really highly touted out of high school, super talented guy, very physically gifted, but just the light has never really come on for him of playing at this level. When they recruited him, he was only 2 years into playing football at all. So he's had some learning to do. He hadn't really quite come on, but if it does, that's a big deal. Would give him a lot of an inside presence at that defensive tackle spot. Defensive end, going to be interesting to watch. Keyshawn Freeman, he had a huge true freshman season. I think he was a freshman All-American. last year did not really follow it up all that effectively. A little bit undersized. There's some talk about possibly moving him to linebacker if it doesn't really work out at the pass rushing defensive end area. But a lot of good youth in the 2 defensive end spots coming into spring practice for sure.
So I'd like to let everyone know who's joined us here in the last few minutes that this is ACC Breakdown. So we do our show every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time. We bring on the best bloggers in the ACC. So this week we got 3 regulars and Mike McDaniel right next to me from inside the ACC. Also Joey Weaver from the Rumble Seat, and also Cam Underwood from State of the U. And this show gets posted to Mark Rogers TV on YouTube, also inside the ACC Mike's site, and various SB Nation platforms, depending on the subject. So, guys, one more go around here, if you can hang on with me, because I like to talk a little Clemson, Florida State. So, Joey, let's stay with you. Anything that stands out for you? Because for me, Florida State's obviously the quarterback position. Sean McGuire is going to miss spring practice. He's still hurting with the ankle. You got a wide open field with a lot of talent. DeAndre Francois has been highly touted. Malik Henry comes in as a 5-star recruit, and you got J.J. Cosentino, who we saw play in spots last season. 10 back on offense, minus the quarterback, depending on how they count McGuire's status. 6 back on defense for Florida State. Clemson really hurting on the defensive side, missing Shaq Lawson, Mackenzie Alexander, and Ben Boulware seems to be the stud that's coming back that's going to have to lead on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I can't say that I'm too particularly knowledgeable about the ins and outs of personnel in those 2 teams, but I will say that Florida State is going to be a team really to watch this year, which is kind of funny to say. It's like they haven't been a team to watch the last couple of years, but 2015 was definitely supposed to be their down year, and I think they lost, twice? And I think the second time was in the bowl game. I think they were 11-1 in the regular season. I think they lost twice. They lost to Clemson and to Georgia Tech. But, so the whole narrative of 2015 was like, if you're going to beat Florida State, that's the time to do it. Like you said, they've got 10 coming back on offense. They weren't bad on offense last year. I think the quarterback situation was a little bit of a mess down there. I remember we were talking before the season about, who was going to win that battle, and the assumed winner was going to be Everett Golson. And I basically made the comment of, I'm not sure that he was actually as good as people kind of wanted to make him out to be coming out of Notre Dame. And that's what we saw. He threw interceptions. Actually, that's not true, not at Florida State, but it wasn't as effective of a system, and they started playing Sean McGuire, and next thing you knew, it was kind of working out a lot more. So it's going to be a good opportunity for them here in the spring to kind of test and see who the next guy is going to be. Malik Henry, it wouldn't shock me to see quite a bit of him this fall. As willing as Jimbo Fisher was to play Jameis Winston as a redshirt freshman, started and took him to a national title game, won a Heisman, all that. Wouldn't shock me to see him kind of do the same thing with Malik Henry, get him a lot of playing time, if not working towards a starter spot, if he can beat out Sean McGuire. So we'll see what happens there. As far as Clemson, like you said, some kind of losses on defense, and they'll have to kind of pick up from that. But if we saw anything from 2014 to 2015, it's like they almost got better going to their backups. And I don't think that that's going to be very easy to do again in 2016. But I think that it's pretty easy to see that that's going to be another really talented, really dangerous unit for a lot of teams around the league.
All right, Joey. So you got to respect Cam here. So he counters your trolling with great point, Joey. So that's what you get from Cam there. Well done, Cam.
I do what I can, but I mean, he's completely right about the quarterback position relative to Golson. And for me, looking at Florida State, since they're our rivals, I do follow them a little bit so that, we know what's going on the other sideline. For me, it's really the Sean McGuire show at quarterback, even, with him missing. And I think that's going to be really good for getting the other guys reps so that if he gets injured again this year, that there's somebody to come in behind him. But I think it's almost to a point where it's like Alabama 2012 with McCarron, who wasn't great, but was a really good college quarterback. It's like when you talk about those guys like Treon Harris from Florida, right? He went to Booker T. Washington and was an amazing high school quarterback and nothing more. And I think that Sean McGuire is an amazing, or not amazing, but a very good, quarterback who can win you a championship at the collegiate level. And he will hopefully for Florida State be able to knock down some of his mistakes and then just facilitate the offense. You have your Travis Rudolph, get him the ball and let him cook. Jesus Wilson, all the other guys, George Campbell, you can name skill players for them. Oh yeah. And then as long as you turn around and hand the ball to Dalvin Cook, number 4, look, you're going to be okay. And you have Jaquez Patrick behind him and. So yeah, it really looks like to me, even with him missing, that's time for him to really be in the quarterback room, really sit with the coaches and really up his mental game so that his mistakes are down, and that will facilitate the offense better for Florida State. And then, coming up in the 2017 season, then you have Francois and Henry and those guys really looking to take a step forward.
So, Mike, Joey talked about it in regards to Clemson's defensive losses. Only 4 starters back on defense, but you rewind a year and you were losing Vic Beasley and Dwayne Jarrett, and they recover with Shaq Lawson, Kevin Dodd. They had 24 sacks out of 48 for the team. So I don't think there's a shortage of talent. A lot of names to sort through. Austin Bryant, Richard Yeargin, you got Sterling Johnson. Who knows who's going to emerge, but I'm sure they're going to rotate 2 or 3 guys on each end and get plenty of speed and edge rush from those guys. The Florida State quarterback situation, whatever you want to jump on here, Mike.
Yeah, so real quick on Clemson, you got a whole bevy of guys that were good enough to start last year, but they were playing behind guys like Kevin Dodd and Shaq Lawson, so that's a big reason why. I mean, the Tigers are just so loaded. Their recruiting classes are right behind Florida State in the ACC year in and year out. They're just bringing in more and more talent, and rightfully so. Dabo Swinney has a great program going there at Clemson, and as long as he's going to be there, they're going to be competitive and a favorite in the ACC, and that's just kind of how it's going to be, at least for next year with Deshaun Watson still in the fold, as long as he stays healthy, as he proved he could do this year, with the amount of times he ran the football, which was a big concern going into the season. So I think Clemson's really set on offense. Of course, defensively, how those new players adapt here, not only in spring but in fall camp, will go a long way to determining just how ready Clemson is to get back to defending their ACC title. If the defense is a little slow to come along next season, which I can't really imagine that happening, but if their defense is a little slow to come along, maybe another team slides in there like a Florida State who really just experienced their first down year in quite some time, which really amounted to 2 losses plus the bowl loss. So, as far as Florida State's concerned, I'm with you, Cam and Joey. As far as the quarterback position, it's going to be Sean McGuire, I think. I mean, he's a guy that Jimbo Fisher really just can't get enough of. I mean, he continues to put him into the game. He loves what he does on offense. He really has a command of the system, which I think is really important. The one thing about Everett Golson last year when watching Florida State play is he never really felt comfortable, and you could see it when they were playing. He just never seemed like he was a guy willing to take chances. At Notre Dame, what we saw out of Everett Golson was a turnover problem for sure. As the seasons went along there for Everett Golson, he was turning the ball over, but he was quick to make decisions. You never saw him quick to make any decisions at Florida State. Sure, he could have been trying to be a little bit too careful with the football, but I think a lot of it stemmed from the fact that Golson just never had full command of the offense, and that's a big reason why when looking at Florida State, they struggled last year offensively. As far as the defensive side of the football is concerned, they are losing the best cornerback in the country in Jalen Ramsey. I was of the opinion, maybe the fact that I'm a little bit biased because I am a Virginia Tech graduate, I was of the opinion that Kendall Fuller was the best cornerback in the country. The fact of the matter is he couldn't stay on the field for the Hokies. That just kept becoming an issue. He hurt his knee. He hurt his wrist. There were some nagging hamstring issues. But Kendall Fuller's a stud when he's in the game. There's no doubt about that. Jalen Ramsey, no question about his durability. That's the reason why he's probably going to be the top defensive back taken off the board. I put my money on it anyway this April in the NFL draft. But outside of Jalen Ramsey, Florida State's got a lot of very young talent, especially in the secondary. Bringing back a guy like Derwin James, who had a great freshman year for them, really came on the last 5 or 6 games, and he just got better and better as the season went on. And they're also going to be returning Trey Marshall to the fold. And Marshall was starting to get his feet wet there towards the end of the 2015 campaign. And then he broke his arm at the back half of the season, and they really missed him down the stretch. I know they won a majority of their games, but they really struggled in the bowl game. A lot of it may be due to motivation, the fact that they didn't really want to be there. But some of it also had to do with the question marks they had in the secondary and the nagging injuries in the back end of their defense. So when looking at Florida State, they're going to return a very athletic defense. And if Sean McGuire continues to show an ability to take care of the football, which we didn't see 100% of the time last season, but at times when McGuire's really good, that offense at Florida State can be really explosive with the playmakers they have with Rudolph and Bobo Wilson and all the players they have on the outside, especially when you have a running back like Dalvin Cook to open things up. The quarterback position just becomes that much more pivotal in the passing game. So I really like what Florida State's been able to do, not only with the recruiting class they're bringing in, but all the guys they're bringing back. And I think Florida State and Clemson will be neck and neck next year in the Atlantic Division to see who goes on to win the ACC, because really I don't see any team in the Coastal really competing with any of those two teams. I think Clemson and Florida State right now are just kind of leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else until Mark Richt gets his feet under him, quite honestly, at Miami. So
Kim and Joey going back and forth on a nice little point here, because I think the athletes at Clemson just a few years ago in the recruiting process were maybe not quite what they were the past couple years. But the bigger difference, yeah, those were still Clemson athletes. They were still really good, but they were giving up 70 points to West Virginia in the Orange Bowl with really fast, really talented players, blowing coverages, not wanting to tackle, not being very fundamentally sound. Brent Venables comes in from Oklahoma, and voila, a top 5 to 10 defense in the country pretty much the last 2 or 3 years. So that's been a huge difference. All right, good stuff from ACC Breakdown Wednesday night. Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat, Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC, and, of course, Cam Underwood from State of the U. Guys, we'll do it all again next week. Appreciate the spring football coverage, guys.
all right, thanks, Mark.
No problem.
Guys.